Hello and welcome to Voices of Canada. I'm your host, Cody, and I'm going to be reading literature either from Canadian authors or based in Canada. If any Canadian authors listening would like me to read some of their work, be it a series of poems, a short story, or even a full-on novel like this one here, I would love to. My email is listed below. The first book I will be reading for this channel is from a Canadian author and also a family friend. He is my father's best friend and was kind enough to give me permission to read this book for the start of my channel. This, as far as genre, it's a fantasy book. It is called Neverking, Prince of the Elves. The author's name is George Augustus, and I've had a bit of a chat with George and figured out the pronunciation of some of the names at least. Any that I mess up, I will be fixing at a later point. So without further ado, we will start. Prologue. The lake was liquid sapphire. Gentle moonbeams bounced and glittered off its silky surface. The water itself seemed to breathe, radiate life, though no life dwelt below its gleaming surface. One soul watched, a living, breathing, restless being stood anxiously at its edge, lost in reflection, and waited. A new life this very moment was about to breathe its first breath of the world's air. One that he'd hoped would mirror his own, a life of honor and trust, one that described the soul of integrity and goodness. A life of leadership and respect was what this man could only hope for. The man standing at the edge of the miraculous lake was called Andor, Grandolimus Andor. Grandolimus was the king of elven kind. His green eyes sparkled with a curious hue of violet as he looked up high towards the moon. Tears streamed unwittingly down his scarred cheeks. The first cry of his newborn son resounded across the land and into his heart, where it will stay forever. Chapter 1. Cursed. Moons descended and moons have risen. It was never anything the people, save for the rare magic users or abundant thieves, took very seriously. But this night, and this icy, turbulent night, the moon seemed to alter and warp itself into something unrecognizable. The murky clouds danced around it in an incomprehensible rage. An illusion. It must have been a trick that the eyes were playing. This was unnatural. Sadly, unnatural or not, it was real and happening that very moment. 20 years have passed since his son was born. Grandolimus was attacked countless times, but each time he and the elves resisted the assaults of innumerable foes. Men, ogres, and even dark dwarves driven by lunacy have coveted the throne that the Elven King now keeps. Grandolimus never wanted this charge of being ruler of the elves, for it meant more than ruling elven kind. Much more. His was a kingdom that signified something to its people, a kingdom with real power that made a difference. Even other races began to show their respects to the Elven King. It started with a handful of humans and dwarves pledging their allegiance to him that brought on a major disorder to the natural rhythm of life. To look at Grandolimus and follow his everyday moves, one would never guess he was a ruler of nations. He blended in as a commoner, mingled with his people, and never accepted superior treatment. Maybe it was because he never wanted to be a king, especially one with his position. Or maybe he believed all men are equal, no matter what blood dwells within their veins. Regardless, this title was thrust upon him, and it was bitter like an unripe lemon, and sweet as a sugared berry leaf. When it came to war, or a quest of great peril, or even keeping the peace, Grandolimus was recognized as a king of greatness. A good captain cannot be judged when the seas are tranquil. The Elf King gazed thoughtfully at the new sight before him. The wind lashed at him menacingly, his honey blonde hair whipping savagely at his cheeks. What was happening? What was the spectacle that was occurring before his and his nation's very eyes? A war, he understood. A quest of great importance, he acknowledged. But what was this? Abruptly, without warning, a light so intense that it overwhelmed the land with its brilliance blinded the Elven King and forced him to lunge to the ground, clutching his head in pain. Where did it come from? Who or what was doing this? A thought pierced him like a blade. His family. Where was his family, and what was happening to them? With more power than he thought he had, Grandalimus stood to his feet. He wanted to scream. He wanted to die. His senses were frayed, but he must get to his family. Though he could not see, he moved ahead, one excruciating step at a time. He clutched the trees, felt their texture. He recognized them. He felt the ground beneath his feet. The terrain was his, and he advanced across it. Was it hours? Was it days? He did not know. Time was unrecognizable. Miraculously, he heard a sound he could make out. A lamb within the blinding light cried a few meters from him. He found the village. Pelendria, the village that reared the Elven King, stood around him. He heard others. They were screaming in panic, fearing the unknown. His family. Where was his family? Then, without warning, everything stopped. The pain, the evil light, it all went away. A wicked laugh took its place. A laugh that froze the blood as it surged in its veins. It took an extensive moment for Grandalimus or anybody to come to their senses. When he did, he realized the village looked exactly as he knew it, except for one thing. Surrounding the village was the murky cloud that swirled around the misshapen moon, and now haunted the outskirts of the generally quiet township. Elf King looked uneasily up at the silver disk that hovered silently over the land. It was the moon he had always known. Was this nightmare slowly coming to an end? No, it was not. People remained frozen where they stood, not knowing what to do. Instinctively, they looked towards their leader for some kind of enlightenment. Grandalimus positioned himself between them and the eerie murkiness that was slowly creeping closer. All suddenly felt a cold presence. The Elf King, without warning or a weapon, slumped unexpectedly to his knees. Everything went black. Chapter 2. The Pupil. Avador! Avador Andor! Where is your brain tonight? An imposing voice resonated into the lad's pointed ears. The youngster, still trying to breathe, gazed up from where he lay and found a thick quarterstaff pointing right between his violet-colored eyes. Slowly, he moved a tuft of honey-blonde hair that fell over his face and stood pathetically before a menacing mentor who looked back at him in disgust. Master Wilm, Avador faltered nervously, I don't know what is wrong with me tonight. Something feels odd. Never mind the excuses, Wilm shot back. You are officially dead because your mind is not here or anywhere nearby. Without another word, Combat Master Wilm Tagome turned his beefy back, a back that often made Avador think of a wall, and marched off to another student. Avador remained where he stood. His mind was truly somewhere else. It wasn't even enough that tonight was the eve of commencement, and tomorrow he takes his final trial. Something else gnawed at his mind. Something unnatural happened, and he was certain of it. A few minutes ago, his heart took a jolt that made his limbs go numb and fall lifelessly at his sides. It certainly was not the blow he took from Master Wilm, one he could have easily avoided. The young elf glanced around him. Man, dwarf, and elf students were doing their best to win the pride of Master Wilm. The rest of the village slept soundlessly. Moonlight filtered through the large window of Grandalimus's bedroom. The humble king sat in bed looking intently at the brilliant sphere that floated high in the starlit sky. Moments earlier he was asleep, or at least he thought he was asleep. Now he sat sweating and uneasy next to his wife, his life mate Symmetra. He gently brushed a curl of crimson hair away from her soft cheek. She stirred next to him and instinctively took her husband's hand in her own. Once everything felt right and in place, she drifted back into sleep. The Elf King tried to make sense of something that was completely alien to him. A mere moment separated one event from the other. It shuddered his very bones. It must have been a nightmare. What else could it have been? Beloved, a soft, silky voice glided through the moonlit room. Is something disquieting you? My sweet Symmetra, responded Grandalimus soothingly. All is well. With that, they both drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. The day took on the night, and morning finally approached the village of Pelendria. The luminous sun now took its watch high above the hills that represented the ceremony grounds. People of every race began to fill its usually empty area. Master Wilm was busily going through the motions of this day of commencement, seeing that everyone was seated and taken care of in the way of refreshments. After all, this day was as much a test for him as it was for all his pupils. Finally, he took his place in front of all that were present. The hills before him gradually elevated, forming a natural amphitheater. His voice resonated effortlessly to all that were seated. I bid you all greetings and gratitude for attending this significant ceremony, a ritual which takes place only once every 10 long, and for some, agonizing years. His husky voice naturally brought everyone's ears to attention. Master Wilm continued with his speech, and everyone remained silent and attentive. Even the other masters who sat to the side of Master Wilm bestowed him their undivided attention as he spoke. So how did everything go last night, son? Grandalimus whispered to Avador. They were seated at the very back behind all who were present. Avador paused before answering. He really didn't know what to tell his father, but there appeared to be a mutual understanding between the two. Avador took in a long breath, then exhaled. Everything was going well, father. I was on top for the entire sequence with Master Wilm. Then the most perplexing thing happened to me. Grandalimus listened patiently to his son, somehow knowing what he was trying to explain. I don't know what it was, but I lost absolute control. I felt a jolt in my heart, and in that instant, Master Wilm defeated me in combat. Avador was shaking his head at the thought. Do not think too much of it, young Avador, Grandalimus consoled. Somewhere an explanation exists. Avador looked at his father. Do you know anything of this, father? Avador asked with extreme curiosity. I cannot say I understand what happened to you last night, my son, but I know that something transpired that was beyond our control. What happened to you was a mere taste of what I felt last night. Grandalimus watched as his son's eyes widened. Yes, Avador, something happened to me as well. Avador started to speak, but Grandalimus was already waving his hand. Put aside your questions, my son. We have to speak of this another time. Now we, especially you, have other matters to attend to. Avador's forehead furrowed in disappointment, but he said nothing. Master Wilm raised a great quarterstaff high above his head. Avador Andor, son of King Grandalimus, my pupil of 10 years, before this great observance of our fellow people, do you acknowledge that your final trial is to defeat me, your mentor, in hand-to-hand combat that is to take place here on these chosen grounds, the elven forest of Gwynfell? Avador took one last look at the audience that stood behind him. No one defeated Master Wilm in hand-to-hand combat. I acknowledge, exclaimed Avador, his eyes now fixed on the smirking face of Master Wilm. Wilm was of no doubt one of the biggest men Avador has ever seen. He had the word battle-hardened written all over his muscular body. The young elf's parents stood in the shadows of the trees, watching in silence, not allowing their faces to exhibit their worries. Grandalimus was puzzled. Why, after so many final tests, has Master Wilm for the first time chosen himself as a contender? The other masters also seem perplexed, but have said nothing. The Elf King fixed his concentration on the melee about to take place between Avador and his mentor. You are afraid, young Avador, Wilm said quietly with a mocking sneer. The people drew a step closer. They didn't want to miss any of the action between the two combatants. You have the guise of a timid rabbit. Do not show fear, Avador. It gives your opponent conviction. Avador couldn't believe Master Wilm was honestly giving him last-minute lessons. He began to resent him, but there was no time for any more thought. Wilm's quarterstaff was swinging wildly and within seconds struck the staff that the young elf carried, sending it flying somewhere into the dense undergrowth of the forest. For a human, Wilm was fast. There was no uncertainty about that. Avador was faster. Before his staff struck the ground, Avador whirled, landed on one hand, and propelled his legs with unbelievable momentum in an arc that struck hard. Wilm's legs were taken out from under him. There was a crash, and the people watching took a harmonized breath. Avador paused, completely astonished. Wilm, though red in the face, took that pause to his advantage. With a grip of steel, the mentor took a hold of Avador's ankle and jerked upwards. The elf fell hard on his face. Symmetra Andor buried her face in Grandolimus's chest. I was a fool to think you would have been a worthy opponent, Elfling. Wilm stood now to his full height and cast a colossal shadow over Avador. Do you admit Master Wilm never got to finish what he was saying. Avador was on his feet and took hold of a low branch off the nearest tree and snapped it off with one quick heave. With the same energy, he let the branch fly, striking Wilm full on the mouth. It was the Master's turn to be in shock. The young elf lunged into the trees, known to him since childhood, and swung himself up, whirling straight towards the dumbfounded Wilm. Grasping his mentor just underneath the chin with his forearm, Avador's momentum and full body weight took him down hard. The next instant, Wilm found himself with a young elf's boot pressing down firmly on his throat. The people roared as Avador stared down triumphantly at the man who was once his master. Well, guys, that concludes this video. Thank you for watching and making it all the way to the end. Hope you liked it, and if you did, I hope you'll like and subscribe to catch what I post next. I'll be posting more, schedule permitting, but as soon as possible.